they were putting out misleading, false and sometimes quite dangerous information around pregnancy and birth.
It's not true what the medical system, what your medical midwives are all saying, that this amount of liters of blood loss is hemorrhage.
Really nothing could prepare us for the amount of harm that we would discover that was linked to the organisation.
What is the Freebirth Society that made millions radicalising pregnant women around the world? Well, I'm thrilled to be joined by Lucy Osborne, one of the two investigative reporters who's been looking into the Freebirth Society for more than a year now, with your colleague Sirin. So Lucy, thanks so much for being with us, and thank you for your reporting, the print piece of which came out last month. But we've also got a 6-part podcast series called The Birth Keepers, which was also landed this week too. Talk me through how you and Sirin first came across this story.
So Sirin, who's my reporting partner, we were both pregnant around the same time in 2022, and we were just really concerned about the amount of misinformation that we were finding on social media around pregnancy and birth. And so we thought it was really important to look into it and sort of find out which of these accounts we should be looking at and the extent to which this information was having an impact on women. We started by monitoring the Freebirth Society more closely and listening to more of their content and discovered that so much of this, or a lot of the information that we were finding was that they were putting out misleading, false and sometimes quite dangerous information around pregnancy and birth. And so we started to suspect that there may be cases of real world harm connected to this. This is an organisation with a huge international following. And so we set out to try and find out how many women were impacted by this information. But really nothing could prepare us for the amount of harm that we would discover that was linked to the organisation.
Yeah, and we'll come to what you uncovered in a moment. But I think it might be worth just flagging what a free birth is, because it's not the same as a home birth, nor is a home birth with a doula or a medical midwife, is it? It's something more radical, more extreme than that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think, a lot of people get it mixed up with home birth, which is giving birth at home with a midwife or a medical professional present. Yeah. Free birth is giving birth on your own with no medical providers present. And the Freebirth Society have advocate for an even more extreme version of free birth. So they also advocate that there's no ultrasounds, no blood tests, no urine tests, no prenatal care at all.
And this term wild pregnancy, which was in your reporting about not having contact with the medical system in any way through your pregnancy.
Yeah, that's right. So I think so we spoke also for this investigation, we spoke to other free birth advocates, and a lot of them also feel that Freebirth Society give a much more extreme version of it. So some of those are the cases of that most people would recognise as life-threatening emergencies like postpartum hemorrhage and gestational diabetes, preeclampsia. They claim that they're usually nothing to worry about, and they also tell women that not even to prepare for the possibility of going to hospital. So these women are sort of going into free births without any sort of backup plan as to if something does go wrong, what to do about it.
So I worked with you and Sirin on an early part of this investigation while we were recording and speaking to women who'd been impacted by this, and I was so struck by the care that you both had taken in really trying to understand the validity of this as a choice, that this is not an investigation into the right or wrong nature of free birth, that every woman, as you say in the podcast series, is entitled to make the decisions about the own birth that they feel is right for them. But what's important is that the information is factual.
Yeah, exactly.
And that you found tragically was not the case. Tell me what it was like as the story unfolded, as you reported, speaking to women in the US and beyond.
Yes, exactly as you said. Sirin and I have been really clear throughout this investigation that women should be free to give birth however they choose to give birth. So whether that's C-section, free birth, home birth. But what we were so shocked by was that women are often making choices around birth that aren't based on informed decisions, based on accurate information. And that's what we were finding, that a lot of these women that were coming across the Free Birth Society, they weren't necessarily, they didn't even know what free birth was, a lot of them, when they found it. They were planning hospital births or home births even, and weren't planning this kind of birth.
And crucial to this is social media algorithms, isn't it? And I know that you and Sirin were both tracking what might happen to a woman and what did happen to the women that you spoke to, in terms of perhaps looking at hypnobirthing might lead you to things that are far more extreme, but that look very aesthetically pleasing when you encounter them on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. Like so many of the women that we spoke to were looking at much more mainstream content online, and then came across the Free Birth Society. And I think like one thing that most women probably feel when they're particularly pregnant for the first time is, we're so used to hearing these terrifying stories of birth and how painful and awful it is. And so the first thing people usually recommend you to do is to look up positive birth stories. And Free Birth Society, the Instagram, which is how most people find it, is largely this sort of collection of amazing, inspiring birth stories. So that's the sort of entry point. And initially, the Free Birth Society, it looks like a lot of other natural birth accounts. It's very very slick marketing campaign, and Emilee, Saldaya and Yolande Norris-Clark, they come across as very experienced, very trustworthy.
Emilee Saldaya being the founder of the Free Birth Society, and Yolande Norris-Clark is her Canadian business partner. The other thing that the Free Birth Society really kind of capitalise on is very valid concerns that women have about the medicalised birth system. I know it's something, again, that you and Sirin had been looking into here in the UK in NHS hospitals, but a problem that is perhaps even more acute in America, and that those experiences of medical trauma, be it in birth or otherwise, is a large reason why women were drawn to the authentic, natural free birth experience that the FBS was selling. Yeah,
exactly. It's I think probably every single woman that we spoke to, and we spoke to, I think, more than 50 women who were influenced by FBS, found it because of some previous experience with the medical system, whether it was a traumatic birth or a traumatic experience in hospital. And in the UK, we've recently had the birth trauma inquiry, where hundreds of women described these very traumatic births, and more women are reporting this kind of treatment in hospitals. So of course, people are looking for alternatives, and for most people that may be a sort of more natural way of giving birth, but in these cases it went to an even to more of an extreme, where they were giving birth without any involvement at all from the hospitals.
But as your investigation has found, the Free Birth Society made a great deal of money. How did it monetize its offerings?
Yeah, so the Free Birth Society started off as just a Facebook group and a podcast, and it's now this multi-million-dollar business empire. They have a series of courses. They have the very popular Complete Guide to Free Birth, which is a video course, and that's made more than $5 million already. The courses, they cost, the Radical Birth Keeper School was the first one. I think that's been running since 2020, and they've made more than $4 million from the RBK school, and their more recent offering. So they've really grown into this global business, and found a way of monetizing something that is by definition free.
So you mentioned at the beginning that when you and Sirin first learnt of this story, you had no idea of the scale of what you were going to uncover, the scale, tragically, of infant death as a result of that can be directly linked to FBS teachings.
So we did discover 48 cases where women or their birth keepers appear to have been linked to FBS. Most of those cases were stillbirths or neonatal deaths, but also cases of maternal harm. Then we also found 18, so within that we found 18 cases of women who either lost babies or were harmed themselves, who appeared to have been significantly influenced by FBS, which led to potentially avoidable tragedies.
So you've put your reporting to Yolande Norris-Clark and Emilee Saldaya from the Free Birth Society. How did they respond to the allegations?
So neither Emilee Saldaya or Yolande Norris-Clark have provided any kind of substantive response. But in response to one of our emails, Emilee Saldaya said that some of the allegations that we made were false or defamatory. Yeah. And she's also said she's put a post on her Instagram describing the coverage in The Guardian as mainstream news propaganda, describing some of the allegations as lies. Yolande Norris-Clark didn't respond at all, but she's previously responded to other criticism and other coverage. She's described her critics as pathetic losers and said that FBS is the most ethical business you can run.
How's it been for you now that the story is out and now that the 6-part investigative series is now live for audiences? It
was a really harrowing experience reporting on this. You know, these women have been so brave. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but they really have been. I think to talk about losing a baby or having, it's the very, very intimate, very private things that they're describing, and they still feel a lot of shame and guilt often about what happens. I think hearing this in their own words, they're very good at describing the extent of the hold that this organisation had on them. I think it can be really hard to explain how essentially a social media business can have so much influence on you, but I think you really hear that in their own words.
Well, Lucy, it is a phenomenal piece of work, and the 6-part series is an astonishing and harrowing listen. So congratulations to you and Sirin, and thank you for your work.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of The Latest, and I really do recommend that you listen to the 6-part new investigative series on Guardian Investigates called The Birth Keepers, and we'll be back with you on Monday.